welcome to Jadu Lifestyle Podcast for another episode. We have been interviewing a lot of wonderful people and getting great information, and today is no different. We have with us today Ron NISEL, and his nickname is the Green Wizard. So we're going to find out today what that is all about. So, Ron, welcome to Jadu Lifestyle Podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, we're going to go right in. I just finished reading your little book and I was so thrilled by the information. But before we go there, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I sat down to write this book to actually just have a handout for my neighbors that wanted to know what I was doing differently. And what I've ended up with is a very entertaining small book that gives you the details to go organic in your lawn care. It just so happens that it bleeds over into gardening and has tremendous results.
And how
So
did you
my
get
attempt,
into how did you get into this?
well, I bought this really old house, 80 some, almost 90 years old, and the yard had been neglected by both its prior owners. So I started, using everything from the store shelves, thinking that I was going to, create this incredible lawn. And what I ended up with was more weeds than lawn. I couldn't understand what was going on. Um, and then I sat down with my neighbor one day, and he decided he was going to get me into gardening a little bit. And I applied some of my father's methods and got incredible results, and come back to the reality of, hey, instead of using the chemicals, go back and use your dad's stuff and do what my grandfather had done, my father had done, his grandfather had done on the farms and everything else. And the results have been absolutely astounding by just going back to the old ways.
Okay, let's go into the book a little bit because I found it one funny, but I also found information in there that I one didn't know, and two, a lot of people now are going into making organic gardens, and I think this information is going to be really, really helpful to them. So let's start with weeds. One of the things I learned is that weeds are supposed to be good, whereas I've always heard weeds are bad. You kill them.
Right, right. That's a complete misconception. Mother Nature has given us weeds to attempt to battle against something I call clayification, which is more clay than topsoil. And Mother Nature is doing her best with what she has to try and fix your yard. And there we are putting a chemical weed killer down and making the problem worse. And the weeds come back even stronger rather than going the opposite direction and dying off, because we're creating the problem using the chemicals, is what I'm finding.
Okay, so what did you find in particular about the weeds that you want us to know?
Well, understanding that weeds are not the enemy. By topping off the flowers, we can stop them from overproducing. But by stopping the use of chemicals, the weeds will go away naturally. There are things in my book that you can use um, as natural weed killers. Mother Nature's provided those. We can stop the weed seed in its tracks, treating the yard. And it's not something that, every year, what I found with, especially with the store-bought system, is you've got to continually keep buying chemicals year after year, more and more, and the weeds just keep coming back stronger and stronger. We're not actually defeating the problem. We're creating a stronger problem by applying the chemicals. When we stop using the chemicals and just go back to using nature, Mother Nature steps in and helps us out, and the weeds naturally go away because the soil conditions turn back to topsoil, where we should have 12, 15, in some scientific studies, they're finding even 40 feet deep of topsoil. We've got barely a half an inch to an inch of topsoil in our yard. So when we start treating our yards better and stop using the store-bought chemicals, go back to nature, Mother Nature steps in and rewards us with fantastic yards and fantastic gardens that produce unbelievable amounts of fruits and vegetables.
All right. I think I have another W word that I want you to talk about. That W word is worms.
Yes, yes. Mother Nature's rototillers. They're the most incredible things. See, this is where the chemicals are actually hurting us, and we're going back to the beginning of the food web, which is the very basic foundation of life itself on the planet. And when we apply these store bought chemicals, we're actually driving the worms away, and they're not here uh, ingesting the soils, breaking down the minerals, breaking down what's available in the soils to make it readily available for our plants. The more worms you have, the greater sign that the soils are healthy and that things are going the way they're supposed to. The worms come in when we have a healthy organic matter growing in the soil or existing in the soils. When we don't have that, we don't have the worm abundance that we should naturally have. We don't have to go out and order worms in. They'll come in naturally. And I found some hints and I found some tricks that we can use to attract the worms into our soils and back into our gardens. And I've added them into the book to make it easier, to speed up Mother Nature, to accelerate the program just a little bit and bring those worms in. See, what they're doing is they're going up and down in the soil. They're going left and right. They come out in the morning and cool off, and they go down deep into the soil, and they take organic matter with them as they're going, and they leave these air pockets, and they naturally rototill. We don't need to be tilling our gardens. We need to be feeding the worms and letting them rototill for us and bring all of that aeration into the soils where it should be instead of the compaction that we currently have. Mother Nature's worms will take care of all of the rototilling needs and allow water back into the soil, allow air back into the soil so that the food web, the organic matter that lives in the soil, can actually live. As soon as we start removing that and as soon as the compaction comes in, we lose that organic life and our plants in our yards struggle tremendously, and then come the weeds. So yes, worms, incredible helpers for everything that we need out there.
Okay, so I think worms are icky, but I understand. I was in a class at one time where we were learning about vegetarian food and things like that, organic and vegetarian, and she actually had a worm farm. So, but she lived in a condo or something like that. So I think she grew the worm, and she talked something about the urine and the worm as being good for the plants. What do you say?
Yes, yes, yes. Worm tea is what they now call it.
Yes.
It's the water coming down through the materials and coming across the worms and the worm urine, and draining off. And it is a tremendous boost to your soils. It's a high nitrogen, high mineral substance coming out of with that worm tea and that worm casting tea.
It's amazing how nature itself takes care of itself, um, and produces what we need. The thing is that I'm not quite sure I can do worm farming, but I guess if I want to learn how to do organic gardening, I might need that. But I want to ask you, are you going to share any of your secrets here, or do you want us to get it from the book?
Well, I would love for people to get their hands on the book. The necessity for the book today in today's world, when we have so much information available on the internet, the problem is some of that information isn't true. Some of that information is misleading. And my book is my actual experience. It's me actually doing it. So learn from my mistakes. This book can help anyone from a brand new homeowner to a well-conditioned NPK gardener change their ways and get even greater results. It's a simple handbook loaded with details, and you have a good time reading it at the same time. because I didn't
Okay.
want a textbook. I wrote the textbook. It was 500 pages. It was terrible. Then I sat down and I wrote this book. And I've been able to provide all the information with the details, with the support structure, and give you everything you need. You don't need to go back to the internet when you have this book in your hands. And we can fix what's going on. We can fix what's wrong and get much greater yards and much greater gardens reading the book. I mean, one of the biggest things that everybody worries about, especially when they start a brand new garden, is, oh my God, I'm going to stir things up and I'm going to bring the weeds back. Well, there's a substance that Mother Nature provides that we can apply very generously, meaning it's cheap. That's the interesting thing. It's cheap. It is it's corn gluten, the material that we're all told to stay away from. Gluten, it's so bad for you. Well, it turns out gluten is incredible as a nitrogen builder for the soil, but it also dehydrates and kills off weed seed. So as you open up a brand new garden and you've never touched soil before and you don't know what you're getting into, you apply corn gluten. One of the secrets in the book, corn gluten, tremendous, tremendous weed seed killer. It goes in, it dehydrates it, it doesn't allow it to come back. So you can eliminate all those weed seeds and understand some of those things are nearly microscopic, the size of the head of a pin, and they're hiding in the soil, waiting for the right conditions. And by going in and opening up a garden, and in most cases, people will go out there and they'll rototill and they'll turn the thing over and they'll apply this and they'll apply that and they'll bring in manures from unknown sources. And what they're doing is bringing in all of these weed seeds. All of these things Mother Nature has provided to change the soil conditions. We need to stop because we're going in opposite direction and we're going to enhance those soils to begin with. All of the things to enhance the soils, to make them readily available this year in a garden or in an apartment for that matter, can all be obtained in this book. Everything is there. But you can treat the soils with corn gluten and solve the problems. In 6 to 8 weeks, corn gluten turns around and becomes a nitrogen, and it feeds the soil. It feeds the plants. So one of the secrets right out of the book, just like, another one for dealing with troublesome weeds in your driveway or something, is to go back to Mother Nature once again and use apple cider vinegar with just a little hint of salt, and salt the area down, spray the area down with just a little hand sprayer with some apple cider vinegar mixed with a little bit of salt, and it'll burn those weeds all the way down through the root bed and stop that weed in its tracks. You don't have to pull it. You don't have to run it over. You don't have to work. When you're working in a garden, you're doing something wrong. You should never have to work chasing weeds, chasing this or chasing that. You should just enjoy the abundance of being out in the garden and getting back to nature. And the book provides those abilities.
You touched on one of the topics that I have written on my notes here because I wanted to address that a little bit. But before I do that, can you give us your information that people can get in contact with you very early so that as soon as they start listening and they want more information, they can go right to it? I'd like to get your website and whatever and other information you want to give us.
TheGreenWizardsGuide.com will take you directly to where the book is and where it
Okay.
can be found. You can also go to Amazon and just type in my name, Ron Neitzel, or type in Green Wizard, and
Okay.
Amazon will bring the book right up. It's available worldwide.
Okay, good. Thank you. Um, the one thing that you brought up ahead of time before I asked, but it's on my note, is the gluten. Now, we are taught not to eat gluten because it damages the inside of the gut and things like that and creates a lot of symptomatic problems, symptoms of diseases.